Welcome everyone that's joined up on in. It's my intention with these conversations to deconstruct experts and their fields outside of the hospitality industry to just help develop a larger toolkit towards happier and healthier lives within the hospitality industry. So this morning, I'm really excited to welcome you, William Frost. Will is a veteran of over 10 years in the hospitality industry, but he's also now a Wim Hof Method instructor. So thank you for being here, mate.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. So this chat's coming at a really good time because my last chat was actually with a guy called Arthur Pollins, and we talked about things like meditation, breath work, and like cold exposure. So I'd like to really dive a little bit deeper with you today, especially with your hospitality background, and ways we can sort of use this throughout our time and try to develop some tips and things that we can do to help situations within the industry. But I think the best place to really start is just to hear a little bit about your story, both in and out of the hospitality industry, and how you've ended up where you are today.
Okay, well, I guess we need to rewind the clock quite far. So where do I even begin? Okay, so most of the work I've really ever done in my life has actually been in hospitality. So back where I'm from in Essex, my mum owns a little tea garden, and it's a very busy little place. People come down all the way from London to go and try her amazing cakes. I am doing a shout out right there. So if anyone ever goes down to Leigh-on-Sea in Essex, go and check out Sarah's Tea Garden. Best carrot cake in the world. Anyway, I digress. So I started working there. Like, me and my brothers and sisters, we all had a job there. You know, it was the first job that we ever had, really. My mum would always just kind of give us the opportunity to go down and start working down there. And I started working there when I was about 12 or 13. And I kind of jumped in and out doing weekend jobs, you know, the odd Saturday, the odd Sunday. And then I got to about 18 or 19. And at this point, I worked in various different modalities, and I was an insurance broker in London, and I was a painter decorator for a little while, and I worked down a theme park. I kind of just jumped all over the place. And then I went back to my mum's and I learned to make coffee. She had this new coffee machine, and I learned how to make coffee there. And that really opened up the doors to other avenues in hospitality. So after working behind the coffee machine at my mum's for a couple of years, a friend of mine who works in a coffee shop in London called Grind. I don't know if you ever heard of them. There's quite a few of them around. There's one in Holborn and Leicester Square. They're dotted all over the place. Really cool company, co-owned by a guy from Melbourne, actually, and a guy from the UK.
My first UK job was actually with Grind.
Oh, no way. Which one?
Yeah, Soho.
Nice.
Yeah, it was about
nice.
4 years back. Sorry, but I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, it's okay. They're good company, man. They're good coffee. Yeah. Probably one of the best in London. So I got kind of headhunted by a friend of mine who worked there, and so I started to make coffee for them for a few months. And when I moved to Canada, I started to make coffee there. And when I moved to Melbourne, and really opened up over here, because the coffee scene in Melbourne is as you know, being from Australia, the coffee scene in Melbourne is the best in the world. It's like the coffee hub. So over the last 4 years, I've been working in various different cafes, and within this time frame, from working at my mum's, I kind of dipped into different, I guess, roles and different levels within those roles within hospitality. So I've not just done coffee. I've done front of house. I've done back of house. I've done kitchen. I've done managerial roles. I've done supervision, and so I've seen exactly what happens in all these different areas within hospitality. And I've seen firsthand just how stress can cripple someone's productivity, someone's clear-headedness. And so about 4 years ago, I discovered the Wim Hof Method, and that has slowly become the main focus in my life. It has really shaken up my understanding of stress and how we deal with stress and how we deal with anxiety especially when we're under pressure. And as you know, working in hospitality, depending on where you are pretty much under pressure, like from the moment you start your shift and the moment you end your shift. You know, I've worked in different jobs where you are under the pump for like 3 or 4 hours straight. You know, you can't even have a glass of water, you can't sit down, you can't have a small chat with the person next to you. You know what I mean? You're just always focused, and that's not really, in my opinion, the natural way that we are supposed to be living every day. You know, we're not supposed to be so driven and focused on a particular task for such an extended period of time, and that can really take its toll on some people. So the Wim Hof method for me has really broadened my understanding not only of stress, but how you can mitigate stress and how you can understand when your body is going into that mode, so you can actually take a moment to stop and respond rather than react on the situation. I hope that makes sense. But
Yeah, really, really
yeah,
does. Yeah,
yeah.
interesting.
So it's played a huge role for me, and I've really noticed how my I guess my personality and the way that I work and the way that I approach my work in hospitality has changed since I started the Wim Hof method, because I'm able to now understand the cues that are coming up from my body, that I know that it's getting to a little bit of a red zone, a danger area. And so I can take the opportunity just to take a step back and take a breath and say, okay, how am I now going to respond to this particular moment?
So, would you be able to explain the three pillars of the Wim Hof method? Maybe briefly as a collective, and then we can unpack each one individually from there.
Yeah. So the Wim Hof method is built on breath work, a particular style of breath work, cold exposure, slow, gradual cold exposure, and then having a mindset, or other people will call it commitment, or your mental state. So those are the three key pillars, and altogether they make up the foundation of what we know as the Wim Hof method.
Should all three sort of be used at once, or like I know each one is their own thing individually, but what makes this sort of combination, I guess, special? The Wim Hof method. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. You're right. Each individual pillar works independently from the other. So you can do cold exposure and get all the benefits from that. You can do a particular style of breath work and get all the benefits from that. And yes, you can be committed to a particular task and you will get the flow state from that, for example. But when you combine them together, something really sort of holistic and something really special can happen when you tie them all together. But you need to be able to combine them in a particular way. So for example, if you're having like an ice bath and you start to do the Wim Hof method breathing in the ice bath, it could be quite detrimental, because when you do that style of breathing, some of the physical effects are quite unpleasant, and you might feel a little bit lightheaded, or if there is a high risk of passing out. So it's never encouraged to do that sort of breath work in or near water. So you need to kind of time when you're going to do these different practices. So with the story of Wim, he first discovered, I guess out of the three pillars, the first one that he really discovered was the cold. So he was in his late teens, early 20s, and he walked past a frozen pond, and he said he just felt a gut pull to get into that frozen body of water. Don't ask me. I don't know. But yeah, he just said he felt his gut intuition, this feeling to get in there. So he made a hole in the ice, he got naked, and he jumped in. And he had always been a seeker. He had always been asking big questions and really looking for the meaning of his life and for life in general. Like he studied Sanskrit, he studied yoga, he studied Buddhist philosophy, but he said the answer he was looking for, he found in that moment in the cold. whatever that answer was, he said he found it in the cold. And so he follows his feeling. Like one of my favorite quotes by Wim is, feeling is understanding. You know, how you feel is never wrong. You know, if you're feeling something, you're feeling it for a reason. So you need to dig a little bit deeper to find the source of that particular feeling. But if you're feeling something, the general rule is you are supposed to be feeling that. And so after he got out the ice water, he said he felt amazing. He felt clarity. He felt at peace within himself. And so he went back day after day after day after day. And through doing this, he started to become more aware of how his body would respond when he got into the cold. So for example, when you get into the cold, or if you feel cold, or if like a splash of cold water like comes into contact with your body, the first thing you're going to do is gasp, right? That's the first instinct that your body goes into. And so he noticed that. He noticed that was the body's automatic response from getting into the cold water.
Yeah.
And so from that instinctive autonomic response, he developed the breathing technique, which is pretty much big, full breaths in, almost like a big gasp, and then just letting the breath go nice and simply. And he developed that through years and years and years of cold exposure. So from the first pillar was born the second pillar. And he took that breath work away from the cold into his living room, and he molded it and he developed it into what is now known as the Wim Hof Method breathing. And in order to get the benefits of the two, you need to have the commitment of the third pillar. So it's not something you just do once and then it sticks, you know, it becomes a practice.
Yeah.
And so the third pillar is it's commitment / mindset. Because you need to have the strong state of mind in order to get into those sort of stressful environments. You know what I mean? You always need to get over the first hurdle, which is your mind and your subconscious, in order to challenge yourself. You know, like even today, I still get a little bit nervous when I get under a cold shower. Even though I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years, I still always have that little voice inside of my head that goes, not today. You don't need to do it today. It's fine. Just do it tomorrow. You know, but we need to become more aware of that voice, because that voice, you know, that's the voice of our ego. And yes, the ego, you know, it's got a bit of a bad rap, but we need the ego because it keeps us alive, and it keeps us aware, and it keeps us, I guess, self-aware as well, which we definitely need.
Yeah.
And so the idea is not to kill the ego completely. The idea is to understand the ego and to say, no, I understand you. I love you for trying to keep me alive, but I am going to override you and do this because it's going to make me feel better. It's going to make me healthier, and it's going to make me stronger.
Yeah.
So that's how we can implement the 3 pillars using this particular method. You know, it's all about using really the mindset, which is the umbrella for the other 2 pillars.
This got me thinking. Like, are they slightly like interchangeable? Because like you mentioned, like you need the commitment and the like willpower to like keep doing these things, like the cold exposure. But then, for me, like the cold exposure, sometimes like I've taken up the cold showers in the last three or 4 months, and I find them a bit sort of like almost like a reset button. Like when my mind isn't in, like rather than using the willpower to get better at the cold exposure, like when I don't have the willpower for other things, I can use the cold exposure to overcome that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Is this quite like a natural thing? Like I suppose it works with breathing as well, and like things like meditation. Yeah, I'm not sure if there was a question there. Like they're all very linked. Like you can use one in a certain situation and another in another situation.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's jump into the breathing side. I know when I was chatting with Arthur last week, we were talking about using the breath as an anchor and also like a gateway into meditation practice.
Mm.
What is breathing to you, and how do you use it?
Breathing is everything. I mean, I don't want to sound it's cliche or woo-woo, but something that I really understood or really come to understand about breathing is that it is the basis of everything. It really is. It's the basis of everything. And once people start to understand that and understand the sheer importance of it, I feel we would have a radical shift in health, not just physical health, but emotional health and mental health as well. So breathing, so I like to say that breathing is the language of the body.
Yeah.
Now, our body is always communicating with us through different channels and different ways, but the breath is probably the ultimate and the clearest language of the body. That channel of communication is always there because we're always breathing all the time, 13, 14, 15 breaths a minute. That is 13, 14, 15 times that your body is communicating with you. Because the way that you breathe is a clear reflection of how your body state is in that particular moment. So take, for example, you go for like a sprint. Yeah, you put your body into quite a stressful state, right? So how are you going to breathe? Like that, because you just put your body through a really savage, active state, and then your breath is going to reflect that. And the opposite is also true. When you're meditating, hopefully, if you're meditating correctly, you're going to be breathing slowly and a little bit more consciously. You're not going to be meditating and going, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't quite work like that. So the breath is always following the body. So it is really the foundation of everything. So one of the things that I like to teach in my workshops and in my online courses is to become more aware, self-aware and conscious of how the body is breathing in any particular time. Because the beautiful thing about our lungs and about our respiratory system and our breath is that I can sit here and not think about it, and I will just breathe fine, normally. But I can also take full control over my breathing apparatus, over the breathing mechanics. And through this interchangeable kind of autonomic and somatic mechanism of the breath, I can take control of my body's state. Because the state of your body, like I said, reflects in the state of your breath. But because we can take control of our breath, we can adjust and manufacture any state within our body that we desire. It's a two-way, interchangeable feedback loop.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the breath really is the key to how you feel on the inside. So if you're feeling anxious, you can take control of the way that you breathe and allow that anxiousness just to calm down by changing the way that you're breathing. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
How can you sort of use that in a hospitality environment, or where have you used that previously? I guess that's the perfect segue, like going from stress and anxiety to hospitality.
Oh, dude, man, like I can tell you so many stories of when I was working behind a coffee machine and we'll just be pumped with dockets. As far as you can see, there'll be dockets, all the different types of milk, all different styles of coffee. And because of all of this practice that I've done with, constant exposure to stress, I have sort of primed myself and conditioned myself to better deal with stress, novel stress, when it's in my everyday life. So before I started to practice this sort of work, if I was in that situation where there were dockets after dockets after dockets after dockets, I would lose my mind. I would completely go nuts. I'd be like, I can't do this. I need help. This is ridiculous. There's going to be a 20-minute wait for drinks. Oh God, this is awful. And in that, I would just start to crumble and go downhill very, very quickly. But since I've been practicing this sort of work, it's a completely different story, because I've conditioned my body in such a way to better deal with those sorts of stresses as they come up. So if there's like a huge row of dockets of all these different coffees, I can just take a breath. Let's do this. Let's just focus one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And if I'm working next to someone, and I can always tell when they're getting hot and flustered and stressed, because, you can feel it. You can always feel when someone is getting really anxious around you. And I would literally, there are so many times where I take the person who's next to me to one side and just say, hey, look at me. Just take a breath. Let's do it. And just put them back, and we'll just start knocking them out. So just to give yourself, that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but just to kind of give yourself that moment to take a breath, reassure yourself that it's okay. This isn't the end of the world. You're not going to die, But also, it's also important to remind, especially in hospitality, that, it is just a job. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people, they take it as life and death, they take it as something that's really serious. And like, I think that's something that's really helped me, is to just see hospitality, cafe job. Yes, I know it's a job, and it's it's given me an income, but it's not life or death. It's not the end of the world. The shift is going to be over in 4 hours. This morning rush is going to be over in half an hour. Just stick it out for half an hour and use this as an opportunity to get better. To get better at your job, and to focus on your breath with each order. You know what I mean? Like, if there's so many opportunities there to work on whatever it is you want to work on in that moment. And for me personally, it was doing particular breathing techniques when I was working through really busy times, because it really does help.
I find that quite interesting. Like, it's almost like a really good way of just looking at every sort of challenge in life. It's like, all right, so this is happening. What do I learn from it? Like, at the end of it, like, I need something more out of it than just the clock telling me it's done.
Totally.
It's quite fascinating. How would someone sort of get started with these things? Like, obviously not everyone can have you next to them in the bar pulling them aside. So how can people sort of get started with these techniques?
So if it's the Wim Hof method, then there's a lot of information, a lot of fabulous free videos on the Wim Hof Method website, www.wimhofmethod.com. And he's also got an app which has got a lot of free downloadable MP3 guided breathing sessions, which is really good as well. But something that I encourage everyone to do, was not everyone is turned on to breath work, not everyone is turned on to cold exposure, but something that I tell everyone to start doing is to add a little bit of challenge into your everyday life. Whether that is breath work or cold exposure, or it can be something else like going for a run, or going to the gym, or lifting heavy shit. Just doing something that is going to challenge your mind and your body. Do it every single day, because because our bodies have been designed to deal with little amounts of challenge every day. And so it is expecting that in our everyday life. And if we deny it of that, that's when we start to see the problems. But if we embrace that and do a little bit of challenge for us every single day, it has a knock-on effect to every single area when stress comes into play. So that's something that I've noticed, which I kind of touched on before, is that is how my stress has changed and leveled out completely since I started cold showers and ice baths. You know what I mean? Like, because one stressor, as far as your body is concerned, is just one stress. It doesn't matter whether it's stress of paying bills or being chased by an animal. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter what type of stress it is. As far as your body is concerned, it is just stress, one word. And so it's going to react
Yeah.
chemically and biologically exactly the same way. So if you can find a way to really challenge yourself every day and to put yourself, I know that in your previous interview with Arthur, he made the point of the different types of stress. You have eustress, and then you have every other type of stress. So for those of you who are watching who didn't see the last interview, eustress is something called hormetic stress. So like going to the gym is a eustressor, a hormetic stressor. Sunbathing is a hormetic stressor. You know, ice bath, again, it's a hormetic stressor, which basically means what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah, we all know that saying. having a little bit of challenge through a little bit of stress is really, really, really good for you. And so if you can apply that little bit of stress into your everyday life, it has a huge, huge kind of knock-on effect to every single stressor in all of your life. If you can deal with one, you can deal with the others.
You touched on a really interesting point, which I definitely want to come back to with the cold exposure chat, which we might jump into in a second. But the fact that things like stress are a chemical response, like all these things happening, like we think of our thoughts and like our stress and like anxiety is just like something that's just happening up here, but it is just like our body is just millions and millions of chemical reactions each day, and if we can sort of influence these things, then we can help change sort of our internal reactions to it. It's what really fascinated me with things like the supplement I built and nutritional psychiatry. Like all these things are chemical, and we can influence them. They're not just some magic thoughts that we have no control over in our brain that just happen. Which I think a lot of people think the world's like happening to them rather than like happening with them. Like we do have a sense of control over this. So like using like cold exposure and stress, like you were saying just there, is a really quite fascinating point of view.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, we are made up of different chemicals and different compounds and different relationships with chemicals and, you know, different genetic expressions. And the beautiful thing about being human is that we can change all of that. You know, we can change depending on our environment, depending what environment we're in, we can change our genetic expression. You know, depending how we're breathing, we can change our chemical state inside, you know. So we really do have the power to change so much about us on the inside.
It's a really unromantic way of putting it, but like happiness is in a way just a chemical.
Yes.
Fascinating.
No, it really is. It really is.
All right, let's jump into cold exposure. It's something I've started in the last maybe 3-4 months. Whenever lockdown started, I got into meditation and cold exposure. I did start the Wim Hof Method in terms of the cold exposure, but I was getting very much into meditation through Sam Harris at the time, so I sort of just picked that one. Something I do want to jump back into, but can we explore like the physiological sort of side of the cold exposure first, and then maybe we can jump into the mental and the cognitive side afterwards?
Totally, man. Yeah, it's super simple. So what it's basically doing is exercising your cardiovascular system. And so what your cardiovascular system is your veins and capillaries and your arteries that run throughout your body. It's a huge, huge, huge network. If you don't know exactly how big it is over 100,000 kilometers in length, which is, to put it in perspective, 2.5 times around the Earth. Okay, so that mode of transport is inside of you. And what the cold is doing, it is exercising that entire system. And that system is responsible for transferring, or transporting, I should say, blood, nutrients, vitamins, antibodies, oxygen, carbon dioxide, everything that basically keeps you alive
Yeah.
is transported through your cardiovascular system. And so it is very important to have that system functional, optimal, strong, and healthy. It is the foundation. We need that system more than really we need anything else, because without that, we just wouldn't be able to stay alive. You know, our heart pumps blood through that system. And so one of the biggest killers that we're facing right now in the Western world is cardiovascular related illnesses. You know, heart disease, heart attacks, you know, strokes, all of these sort of ailments have a weak cardiovascular system at its core. So exposing ourselves to cold temperatures on a regular basis is strengthening that entire system and really offloading some of the pressure off of your heart. You know, it's basically saying, you know, I can deal with a lot of this now. You can just take a little bit of a break. So that's what it's really doing. It's strengthening that entire system.
Yeah.
So, which is really, really important.
So with like one of the really interesting things about like nutritional psychiatry, like theories and research is it identifies like biomarkers of depression, things that are happening with our body that is common throughout people with depressive symptoms. One of these things is chronic inflammation and stress-caused inflammation. I noticed on, I believe it was your LinkedIn, you were chatting about using the Wim Hof method to counteract. I think I lost you for a second. Using the Wim Hof method to address and counteract like stress and stress-fueled inflammation. Could we explore that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so inflammation is really at the root of virtually every single lifestyle related diseases known to man. You know, and it's even been shown to be set and rooted in depression as well. So inflammation of the brain. So inflammation. So in one of the first or second studies that Wim Hof did, he showed that he was able to decrease his inflammation just by using his breath, his breathing technique. So what this study showed was that we can take full control over the immune system, because inflammation is part of the immune system. You know, we get an inflammatory response when we get sick. So, you know, when you get hot and cold fever, when you get shakes or a feeling of nausea, you know, that is a sign that your immune system it's working. It's fighting something off. So all of those signs that we unfortunately have underscored as bad is actually pretty good, because it means that your immune system is working and it's fully functional and it's fighting something that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And so Wim said he could control that response. He said he could control that inflammatory response, that natural response to the immune system. Everyone laughed at him. Everyone thought he was a joke until science got involved. And so they were like, okay, well, prove it. Prove that you can control your immune system. So they injected him with something called an E. coli, which is a dead bacteria taken from human feces. And what that basically does is it elicits an inflammatory response in the body, whereas the body sees it as an invader. It goes into an inflammatory response for like a couple of hours, and then it subsides and you're all okay. And it's basically a marker of how strong and how reactive one's immune system is. So they injected Wim Hof with this, and he did his breathing technique, and he came away with just a little headache. And so that was the first time in recorded science that someone was able to control their immune system at will. But they all thought that he was a freak of nature. You know, they thought he was like just a one-hit wonder. But he was adamant that he can teach people this. So he took 12 students, taught him in his technique, and after just 4 days, they were all injected with the same bacteria, and all 12 of them were able to influence their immune system. And that was really the birth of the Wim Hof method, because that was conclusive evidence that people are able to do so much more than what contemporary science has limited us to. So we are able, so what's really exciting about that is that it's not just inflammation, but it's everything that inflammation is really rooted in. You know, if we're able to control our immune system, you can basically never get sick again. You know, if you can control the way the immune system is functioning, you can never, it's impossible to really get sick, because you can just fight off that disease, that illness, that virus. You know, so learning these sort of methods and these sort of techniques right now are so essential to our lives, especially now, you know, with what's going on in the world right now. This sort of work needs to be out there to more people, because we and you, everyone, we all have the power to do so much more with our health. But no one talks about that, you know. No one talks about the importance of the immune system. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame. And that's something that I'm trying to get out there to more people, you know, how vital it is. But not just how vital it is, but how lucky we are to have an immune system that is so epic. You know, the immune system is seriously one of the most fascinating things. It really is. Like, it really does wonders for us, but people just take it for granted. And so we really can control inflammation. And if we can control inflammation, you can say goodbye to depression. You can say goodbye to a lot of mental health issues. You can say goodbye to autoimmune diseases. You know, you can say hello to faster recovery and more optimal and solid health for everyone.
It's quite fascinating. Like, I think, like, inflammation in itself is just the body essentially reacting to I guess like a foreign invader. It's way of like protecting itself, and it is a system that is meant to be like turned off and turned on quite quickly. It's not meant to be constantly like activated. And I think it's not overly well known that stress internally within the body, if we get back to like the chemical side of like these feelings that we feel, like stress is seen by the body as a foreign invader, and it switches on the immune system, the inflammatory response, and it creates these things that can be harmful when it is switched on constantly, which is something that we have a lot of in the hospitality industry, especially like if we're just constantly under these days of stress, and if we don't have these stress releases, then this immune system is constantly switched on. And it can cause a bit of harm. It was something I, like when I was researching this chat with you, something I learned about cold exposure was actually naturally increases levels of glutathione, like the body's biggest natural antioxidant, which is quite fascinating. It's such an important thing, especially in fighting like the negative effects of stress.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. How can we?
Yeah.
I know it's probably a bit harder than like the breathing techniques and stuff. And aside from like just having cold showers or implementing cold showers into our lives, how can we sort of use cold exposure within the hospitality industry? I know it's a bit of a tough.
I think it's more so what you do in your home time, you know, in your spare time. There's really not much you can do when you're at work.
Yeah.
You know, unless you go to the ice maker and grab some ice and just like shove it in your face, which I have done from time to time, but you get strange looks. It's really what you do in your home time that has the overflow effect into your work. you know, because there really is not much you can do in terms of cold exposure. There's really not much you can do at work. You can breathing, however, is a different story. Breathing is a different story because
Arthur,
if people
go for it.
go for it, go for it.
Just Arthur mentioned this a bit last week. Like all of these techniques are sort of an extension of things you do from home. Like you establish the regular practice at home, which could only take like 10 minutes per day, and you take what you've learned. You take what you've learned from these things then into work. I think he was talking about the one breath, and you pretty much touched on like your version of what he calls the one breath. When you were talking about being behind the machine, like this is just an extension of maybe the 10 minutes you spend at home each day.
100%, 100%. Whereas if people understand that the way that you breathe changes the way that your body responds to whatever environment that you're in, the more people understand that, then the easier it'll be to apply that into your work. So simply just by, you know, for example, slowing down the exhalation takes you out of a stressful state, chemically speaking. So just by slowing down your breath, everything just relaxes. And so when you're at work, you can start to employ those sort of techniques. If you start to, you know, get pumped through a morning rush or a lunchtime rush, and it takes you by surprise, just take it and then tell yourself, let's do this. You know, that's where the third pillar comes in. You know, is that mindset. It's the mindset. It's the mind state. It's telling yourself, hey, I got this. It's all going to be okay. Let's pump it. I got my breath. I got my hands. I got my health. It's all good. Let's go for it.
I imagine there'll be a lot of like subconscious benefits as well. Like you do take up these things, and then you're just sort of doing them without even noticing in these stressful situations. Like, I think like this is again something that might be missed. Like for me, it's probably easiest to talk about meditation when referring to this, but like I think a lot of people think that potentially the benefits of meditation come from your 10 minutes sitting down, but for me it's what happens throughout the rest of the day.
Yes, totally.
So I imagine it would be incredibly similar with, well, we touched on it with the cold exposure. Like it's not something you can do outside, but with breathing as well, like the benefits are definitely there when you are doing it in those 10 minutes or 20 minutes each day, but then you're seeing the benefits as well throughout like the rest of your 23 hours and 40 minutes.
Exactly. It's all about what you can do in those short moments that you have to yourself in like the morning that has the overflow effect into everything else that you're doing throughout your week. And it's the same. You can
go for it.
Because you can take the example of, you know, going to the gym. You know, you spend what, an hour, 90 minutes at the gym, and how good you feel for the rest of the day. You know, it's the same deal. It's the same deal. It's all part of the same thing. So but I'm just going to quickly grab my charger because I feel my battery is about to die.
That's no problem.
I'll be 2 seconds.
Sure. So you guys have any questions watching on? Feel free to jump on in and send them my way. We'll ask Will if and when we have time.
All right. We're back.
So we've got just over 10 minutes left. Let's jump into the third pillar. The possibilities where to jump in on this endless. So I'm not overly sure where to jump in, how we can use this. Do you have any preferences on where we can begin this conversation?
There is no Wim Hof method without the third pillar.
Yeah.
And because it encompasses the other two. I mean, as the point I made before, you need to have the commitment to the task in order to complete the task. And so you can really apply that to every other area of your life. You know, you need to know why. I guess, yeah, it's your why. You know, the third pillar is your why. Why are you doing this? You know, why are you having that cold shower? Why are you doing that breath? And again, people need to apply that to the rest of their life. You know, to take a moment and just question yourself, like, why am I doing this? What good is this serving me? What good is this serving my loved ones or my community? You know, so that is really what the third pillar is all about. But it's also about, okay, so have you ever heard of a guy called Scott Carney, an
No,
author?
I don't think so.
Okay, so he's an investigative journalist who wrote a book on Wim Hof a couple of years ago called What Doesn't Kill Us. Fantastic book. But it's not just about Wim Hof, it's actually about all of his different techniques which create hormetic stress, you know, back to that eustress terminology. So the story with Scott Carney is that he's an investigative journalist and he's made a career out of debunking charlatans, you know, debunking people who claim to do the most outrageous things, whether it's, you know, gurus or self-proclaimed sages or shamans or something like that. So he heard about this guy called Wim Hof who said he can, you know, control his immune system and his nervous system and, you know, never get sick. And he said he can teach people how to do this. And Scott Carney thought he was a lunatic and he was going to go out there and prove that he was wrong. So he went out he went out to Poland to meet with Wim, expecting to debunk this charlatan, but he ended up becoming his biggest fan. He ended up becoming like his number one pupil. And so he wrote this book called What Doesn't Kill Us. And he then released another book, which came out a couple of months ago, called The Wedge. And The Wedge is an extension of what he learned doing Wim Hof and exploring all of these different techniques. And The Wedge is the idea of using that little bit of challenge, which I spoke about earlier, and using it as the intermediary between stimulus and response. And so the more that we apply the wedge into our life, the greater the wedge will become. So the more that we apply hormetic stress or challenge into our everyday life, the better we become at responding to stimulus in our life. And that
So
to me is what
it's a muscle, essentially.
Exactly. Exactly like a muscle. And that to me is what the third pillar is all about. The third pillar to me is all about understanding the gap between whatever is happening around us and the way that we respond to it. Rather than being reactive, we take a moment to simply respond. And that, again, to me, that is what the third pillar is all about, because that's where the commitment comes in. The more you apply it, the thicker the wedge becomes, the more grounded and, I guess, empathetic you will become to your environment and to whatever situation you're in. And one of my favorite, I don't know whether it's a quote, but I heard it somewhere. If it is a quote, maybe one of your listeners can actually tell me who said it. But I'm not sure who said it. But one of my favorite quotes, it goes, rather than seeing, I'm going to paraphrase and I might completely butcher it, but you need to see life as not happening to you, but happening for you. And if you can apply that mantra or that quote to your life, everything just becomes that bit easier. You know, if you're having a challenging time, just say, hey, you know, this is happening for me. What can I do about this? How can I take control? Like today, like Melbourne went back into lockdown for 6 weeks and, you know, I've lost a lot of business. And I was spending my time in the car thinking, how am I going to work around this? And what can I do to come out on top in this situation? Rather than, you know, getting upset and angry at the world, there's nothing I can do about it. It's out of my control. So what can I do that is in my control? How can I change my response to this stimulus? That's
I
what the
feel like
third pillar is all about to me.
this is a really important thing. Like going back to the hospitality industry. I know your backgrounds with coffee, but I'm sure you've had plenty of experience with bartenders and the bar industry as well. Like if we are like quickly reacting, we can sometimes fall into destructive habits. Like if we are going through a stressful
Yes.
night, we'll jump in and we'll grab a shot because we think that's like the way to deal with this stressful situation. But
Mm,
there are other ways. There are far healthier ways and ways that probably actually work rather than
yes.
just getting drunk. Um,
Yes.
like I'm definitely no. Well, I wasn't a saint for this myself. Like my background's the bar industry, and I've done that so many times. But you just find yourself getting drunk rather than dealing with the stress or responding to the stress or even growing from the stress, like we've touched on several times. Like
Mm,
we're sort of like just trying to get through it rather than growing from it. So I
totally.
find like I think when I started this chat, about 50 minutes back, like I was thinking maybe the breathing could be like the most important pillar for the industry, but now I've switched that around to like maybe like the third pillar is actually
Mm,
the most important for a hospitality situation.
yeah. I guess they're all as important as each other because
Yeah,
they all create that end goal that we're really looking for, which is that inner peace, really. And when you can cultivate that in your home life, you can cultivate it at work. You know, you can cultivate it anywhere in your life, anywhere that you are. You know,
how how can we go about breaking down comfort barriers and why should we?
comfort barriers.
Yeah, like being a little bit uncomfortable.
Mhm. Oh man.
Do only have about 5 minutes left before we have to wrap up. Or
Okay.
we get kicked off.
um. Okay. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the comfort zone.
Yeah.
Only if you stay in there for just a little bit of time.
Yeah.
You wanna stay in there for the time that you're sleeping and for maybe like 5 minutes during the day. But other than that, you need to shake things up. Yeah, it was in order to experience a wider flexibility of wellness and greater health, you need to be able to get out of your comfort zone and you need to challenge yourself on a regular basis. That's not necessarily, just having a cold shower every day. That could be anything. That could be taking up a new sport, taking up a new hobby, going to a new gym, going to a new social event or meeting someone new or talking to someone new or whatever it is, something that you're completely uncomfortable with. It's okay to be uncomfortable. I think a lot of people now are so conditioned to be comfortable and we're so conditioned to be, you know, coddled. You know what I mean? Like we're so obsessed with comfort, and even in death, we have padded coffins. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like even in death, we want to be comfortable, and unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, excessive comfort causes death. Yes, and that's as far as I'm concerned. I think, I really think that one of the biggest causes of so much of the illnesses we see in today's world is because of chronic comfort.
Yeah, it's
You
fair.
know, we're not designed to be in climate controlled environments 24/7. We're not supposed to be wearing clothes all the time. We're not supposed to always have food in the fridge. We're not supposed, unfortunately, we have evolved far quicker than our bodies can keep up with.
Mm.
And so this is, I guess, to bring it back to Wim Hof, but this is where the Wim Hof method and other such practices come in handy because it's taken us back to our roots. It's taken us back to our primal biological roots because our bodies have been evolved and designed by nature to deal with these sort of environments. And so it's important to put us back into those states from time to time so our bodies know what to do. Because if not, it will turn on itself.
It's quite a fascinating thing, and I wish potentially we had a little bit more time. But like, yeah, like the way we act now in the world, like if we look at dopamine, for example, like if we go to like our evolutionary sort of bodies, like dopamine's there to like move us towards something. Like it's not just the reward process, like it actually does help move our body as well. So it's like moving our body towards something that we see beneficial as life. But now we see dopamine as like drugs or, you know, notifications on our phone.
Yeah.
And then if we take this to comfort, like we just touched on, like we're getting comfortable just getting our regular dopamine hit rather than sort of trying to push ourselves forward as people to both live, survive, and grow. This is going to lead me down a path of just writing all day now, so this is going to be great. It's quite fascinating. I really like that you briefly touched on like purpose and the why. Then it's been an overarching theme of all of these conversations, whether it's been with like you and Arthur on breathwork and cold exposure and Wim Hof, or even chatting about community and mental health. Like finding a purpose and a why seems to be something that we all need to potentially do a little bit more of.
Yeah, we all need to find our why. We all need to find why we're doing what we do. Because if you don't, you're just shining a torch in the darkness. You know what I mean? Like we need to turn on the light to see where we're going.
It doesn't need to be like a big like grand life plan. Like it can just be something quite simple, as long as like you're happy with it and you want to do it, and it's moving somewhere. Like there's but anyway, we're about to get kicked off, so thank you so much for having a chat to me, Will.
You're welcome, Matt. I love what you do. I love what this is all about.
Thank you. Where can people come find you if they are interested in seeing what you're doing or having a chat? Or I know a lot of my audience is probably the UK, but I still think they could probably gain quite a bit from seeing you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. It's been an honor. I'm pretty mostly active on my Instagram, which is what this is. My website is up and coming. It should be ready in the next few days. It's been a long process putting that together, but it is up and coming. So I guess when that is up and running and live, I can forward you the link if you want to just maybe put that somewhere. Okay. But other than that, my Instagram is the best place to find me for now. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll link people there. Awesome. You have a lovely night, and hope you stay safe in the next six weeks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Been great for you.
Thanks,
awesome.
Man. Have a great day. Thank you. I'm really
buddy.
appreciative.
Thanks, mate. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.